Hi, welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home. I'm Jenelle Riley. I'm an editor at Variety. I want to let everyone know that the SAG-AFTRA Foundation has a COVID-19 relief fund to support SAG-AFTRA artists with basic needs like rent, food, and health care costs during this global pandemic and industry shutdown. Donations are 100% tax deductible and directly support performers in dire need. Information on how you can support this effort can be found in the description of this video. And now it is my pleasure to introduce today's guest, Jeremy Irons. Thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure, a real pleasure.
You are, of course, an Academy Award winner, Tony Award winner, a 3-time Emmy Award winner, and the best Disney villain ever. And now you find yourself nominated for an Emmy Award for your work in Watchmen, which is just a flawless series.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's extraordinary.
I always like to go back to the beginning because this is mainly a SAG-AFTRA audience and ask, how did you get your SAG card?
I think I got it when I came to New York to do The Real Thing. A play by Tom Stoppard, which I'd seen in London with the wonderful Roger Rees, English actor, then moved to New York, and Felicity Kendall. See, I'd been asked to do The Real Thing in London, but couldn't because I was filming Betrayal. And I went to see Roger Rees and Felicity Kendall. They were wonderful. And then I was in Australia making a film with Liv Ullmann, and I heard through the grapevine that Meryl Streep and Kevin Kline had gone to see a performance of The Real Thing in London. And, you know, my brain sort of whirred, and I thought, aha, they want to do it in New York. Over my dead body. So I called my agent, who at that time was Robbie Lantz, the late Robbie Lantz, great New York agent. And I said, Robbie, you've done nothing for me so far because you haven't been able to. I hadn't been with him very long. But if you don't get me The Real Thing, I'm leaving you. And so Meryl and I were cast. And of course, I'd worked with Meryl in The French Lieutenant's Woman. So she and I, you know, we knew each other well, but nevertheless, she turned it down. Meryl has the habit, I think, of accepting things on Broadway and then turning them down later. Hope it wasn't because of me. And so I did it with the beautiful Glenn Close instead. Well, that must have been the time, because that was the first time I worked in New York. That must have been when I got my SAG card.
And was that your first collaboration with Glenn Close? Because obviously you went on to work together. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
We worked together quite a bit after that. But no, that was the first time that I'd worked with her. Wonderful experience.
Well, you won the Tony Award for it, so you definitely made the right choice.
Yeah, we both did. And the play did. And I think Tony Walton, the designer, did. And Mike Nichols, of course, the director, did. And so it did very well. I think I always felt it was I thought it was Tom's best, well, his most heartfelt play, anyway. I mean, he writes these extraordinary intellectual sort of plays, but this one I thought had his heart in it, and I love doing it.
It's a fantastic play. And by the way, I think they just revived Betrayal on Broadway this last year with Tom Hiddleston, who played your son previously. Right. I believe, did you see that production? I thought you did.
I didn't. I wanted to, and for whatever reason, I never did see it. It's strange seeing. Well, of course, I never did the play of Betrayal. We made the movie. But I remember when I was asked to go and see when The Real Thing was redone in New York, and they said, you know, would I go to the first night? And I said, listen, I wish them well, but I feel rather like it's an invitation to the marriage of my ex-wife. You know, I wish her well, but I actually don't want to be there.
I love it. Yeah, that has to be strange.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I want to get right into Watchmen because it is just perfect. It is such a great series, and I'm curious what attracted you to it, and if you were familiar with the book or the previous movie when you signed on.
No, I was in LA. I was just finishing something and about to fly back to the UK. And a message came, would I have lunch with Damien Lindelof? and about this thing called Watchmen. And so anyway, I did. We met and had an amazing lunch. I mean, the food I don't remember, but the conversation was extraordinary. Damon is a man whose mind is like a firecracker, and he talked continuously for about an hour, and most of it I didn't get hold of at all. But what came shining through was his spirit and his enthusiasm and his originality as a writer. And he gave me some idea of what he was going to expect from me. And I think a couple of days later, I read a script, and I thought this is, and also I read the Bible, the Ark, or most of the Ark, not all of it. It wasn't all decided. And I thought, well, I don't know. This is extraordinary. This is original. This is exciting. His energy and enthusiasm is such that I'd really love to be part of it. And so I accepted it largely on trust, just on an instinct that this man was going to come up with something extraordinary. And I was very happy to be with it, to accept. Of course, also I was going to be shooting a lot of my stuff in North Wales, in the United Kingdom. And having been away filming for a long time, I was quite glad that I could spend some time sort of near home. But these little things are what encourage you. And then as the series developed, and I began, I read at that point, of course, the illustrated novel. I never read one before. And I thought this is extraordinary. And when finally I read the mostly complete script, I saw the brilliance of what he'd done, which is to contemporize the form of that 1980s illustrated novel and make it about that world, but also very much about our world, as that world in the 80s managed to do about its time. So I was glad that my instinct took me in that direction.
I'm trying to imagine, because you weren't familiar with the world of Watchmen when Damon was talking to you. Did you really understand what he was saying? Because trying to explain Watchmen to someone who hasn't read the graphic novel is just an exercise in futility, I find.
Yeah, I quite agree. No, I didn't understand. I understood hardly anything of what he was saying. But I understood on a base level his enthusiasm for this project. And, you know, enthusiasm is something you can't buy. It's something that someone either has or they don't. And so I jumped aboard that.
Did he tell you things like you're going to be fishing babies out of the water and baking them in ovens into clones, and you just went with it?
Not at that point. Not at that point. He said we're going to, you're going to be doing some sort of extraordinary things, which, of course, once you're in that character, seem entirely logical.
Of course, yeah.
There's no. I felt extremely normal when I was playing him, but looking at it now, I realize that he's not quite normal.
I mean, how did you go about preparing to play him? I don't know if you based him on anybody.
No, I didn't. I mean, I knew I based him on Adrian Veidt in the illustrated novel. Although, of course, I now am older than he was. But a man who used the technology of his day to do what he was trying, was way ahead of his day, what he eventually did. But then, of course, Adrian is locked into this planet in the 1930s, where there are only certain things that you can do, which you you know, so he was, and also he didn't have the equipment. He couldn't travel. I mean, he didn't have what he needed. He didn't have his tools, so to speak. So he had to make do with what he had. He certainly had some imagination. And I'm very happy that, I mean, I'm a country lad. I'm very happy left to my own devices. There's an awful lot of Adrian. I'm also a bit anarchic, probably. There's a lot of Adrian in me, and I just tapped into that.
Well, I'm curious about that because, you know, you have played some really memorable villains, and I'm very curious about that word because I don't know that I see Adrian as a villain. He really believes in every single thing he's doing, and sometimes I kind of agree with him. What was sort of your take on him?
Well, of course, I agree with everything he was doing because I was doing it. You know, it's very strange when you're playing a character. I mean, you get inside that character, and with a man like Adrian, who had great sort of arrogance, he didn't question what he was doing. He just thought, well, that's what we have to do, and that's what I'll do. And it makes absolute sense to me. And it's, yeah, I mean, that's the nature of playing, whether it be a villain or a good guy. I don't know if Adrian was a villain or a good guy. It's difficult to tell. I mean, he would say, I saved the world from nuclear catastrophe in a pretty simple way, raining large crustaceans upon people's heads. You know, it's better than being blown up by a nuclear bomb, isn't it? So and as far as the way he treated the clones, I mean, you know, they're clones. I think that could be criticized from the outside, as a lot of human behavior can be criticized from the outside, and maybe rightly. But when you're playing the character, this is just an obvious way of being.
Have you ever approached a character as just a villain? I can find arguments in all of them, even Scar. I actually feel bad for Scar. Maybe it's being the youngest child. I can relate to that.
No, I don't. I don't think villains, probably, some may, but I mean, Richard III did. He sort of knew. I think he was a bit of a villain. But I think mostly people just, they're doing what they're doing. I mean, I would see villains all over the place. I would say that a lot of people at Goldman Sachs were villains, but I don't think they would see themselves as villains. Mm-hmm. It depends really how far back you stand from society, from the world. But when you're in it, when you're doing whatever you're doing, I don't think you'd do it if you thought you were a villain. I mean, you may think, oh, I'll get away with this, but I think a lot of us will think that about the little villainous things we do in life. But it's no use when you're playing a character to think of yourself as a villain. And I always like, anyway, to try to sort of make them a little bit grey, not black and white, so that the audience is maybe not sure.
I mean, you had me feeling empathy for Klaus von Bülow, which is saying a lot. Like, I saw him as human.
Yeah. But he was in a tough situation, you know?
Yeah, I get it. This is revealing too much about my psyche, sorry.
Well, I do think that now, we especially with the net of FaceTime, and I don't use it all, but I mean, it seems people take terribly entrenched positions now. Everything is black or white, and the language is really strong both ways. And come on, you know, life is very grey, very, you know, truth is a very strange thing, and black and white life ain't. Mm-hmm. It's grey. It's complicated.
Which is one of the things I love about Watchmen so much. And I mean, the entire cast, I know you worked primarily with the two actors who play the clones. I think it's Tom Misson.
Tom Misson and Sarah Vickers, yeah.
Sarah Vickers, yeah, who are wonderful.
Oh, they were mesmeric. I mean, I enjoyed playing with them so much. Wonderful actors, English actors. They haven't got nearly enough attention, I think,
Agree.
in Watchmen, because what they do is splendid and subtle, and I find quite hysterical playing with them. I mean, I adored it. I think they're really very, very clever as actors, and we had a month together in Wales shooting all of that, and it was joy, absolute joy to work with them.
Was it technically difficult because did you have to reshoot things over and over again because they're playing so many people?
Yeah, no. There was only one scene I think that had to be reshot, shot over and over, which was the end of the court case. But fortunately, I was gone. They didn't shoot on me. I was off doing something else. But I did hear them for most of the day doing different angles on Sarah and Tom dressed as different people.
And your scenes with Hong Chow are just so fantastic. This father-daughter reluctant dynamic.
Well, which of course I didn't know when I started playing with her. I had no idea that she was my daughter, Hong Chow, who's so off the wall. It's not true. And I loved her oddness and I don't know, but her mind. She surprised me and always amused me and kept me on my toes. She's a wonderful actress.
You didn't know she was your daughter when you first started doing scenes?
No, I actually didn't know. I mean, Damon would keep things from me. I didn't know when I was up on wherever it was, the moon of wherever, I didn't know what the end of the message "Save Me" was while I was doing it. I didn't know it was "Save Me, Daughter." I also had no idea that I was to spend so much of the series as a statue. I mean, all that timing business was Damon. Yeah. So I had a lot of surprises too, which I like.
That's amazing. By the way, did they make that statue of you? That wasn't you standing there, was it?
No.
Okay. Where is the statue now? Did they let you have it?
No, of course they didn't. I'm not sure I'd want it either. It'll probably be in some, I don't know where, some property shop somewhere.
Can you get to work with Jean Smart?
Well, we had some laughs. Jean, yeah, and Tim Blake Nelson also. I mean, wonderful actors. The great thing about, and Yaya, the great thing about Watchmen is that it was beautifully cast. Not only beautifully cast, but also they took real care about it. You know, we had, I mean, Damien was overall watching, but we had wonderful directors. And I'm glad to see that in the Emmys they've been recognised in the nominations too, because it's really to make such a piece of television with a company, a fairly large company as we were, a company of actors, and to create such a wonderful unit. A family, really. Shooting went on for quite a while. And to have connected with some wonderful actors to make that family, it's really the directors who do that, and the producers. And it was a wonderful experience. And making such a television show can be quite dry, but this wasn't. It was a really splendid time, and the sort of time you have when you're working in the theatre, when there's a company working together, and there's a real camaraderie. That was created while we were making Watchmen, and you know, Regina there doing. I mean, wherever you looked, you saw people doing wonderful work. And you saw actors that you admired hugely, and that's great.
I was curious about that because Adrian spends so much time on his own sort of planet, and then you get into these later episodes. Was it fun to finally get to interact with all these other great actors?
Yeah, well, of course, I never interacted with Regina, ever. The only interaction I had with her was in her trailer, where we would have a laugh. But Tim and Jean Smart, yes, and by the time I joined them, they were this great family. I was the person they'd heard about, and then I turned up. But they were very welcoming, and they put up with me even though I was an Englishman.
I'm curious, when you finally got to don the famous Ozymandias suit, what was that like? Because that could either feel silly or it can feel empowering.
It felt incredibly silly.
Oh, really? It looked empowering.
Good, good. Well, I'm glad it did. That was maybe a bit of acting. No, I mean, you know, that's very much an 80s Superman costume. I mean, I've never envied any of the actors playing Superman, for instance, having to deal with those costumes. I think I was very glad that I was not in it a lot. Mm-hmm. I hope it looked all right, but you know, me, I'm a jeans and jumper guy, really.
Well, aside from that, what ended up being the most challenging aspect of the role? I mean, there's so much going on in this performance.
I don't know. Make him interesting. Try and surprise Damon a little bit. In truth, the most challenging aspect of any performance for me is learning the lines. You know, once I've done that, and if there's time to have a bit of fun with the scene, which in this case there was, just to make him off the wall, to make him surprising, to try and keep a jump ahead of the audience so they wouldn't know what to expect. I always like to try to do that. But, I mean, it's very strange, the process, because, you know, you get into a character and then you are him and it's sort of easy, you know? I suppose, yeah, once the lines were learnt and I was out there, then it seemed just normal. I just did what I was asked to do.
It surprises me to hear that, just because you have so much stage experience and you've done Shakespeare and Stoppard. I mean, like, I would think that lines would come easily to you.
Ah, no. No, as you get older, they get harder. This last year or the year before, I did Long Day's Journey into Night, the O'Neill. Quite a lot of lines in that. And yeah, it doesn't get easier. It doesn't get easier, but there we are. It's one of those things, you know? It's not like riding a bike. You just have to put a lot of work into it.
It's kind of a basic question, but I think actors would love to know, how do you learn lines? Do you have any tips? Do you record yourself?
No, I just do them over and over. I mean, I have a very long-suffering PA who throws me the reply lines back so that I can get a run on scenes. And I have a very long-suffering wife who, if she's not working, she's also an actress. If she's not working, then she'll help. But it's very useful to just go over and over and over and over. And it takes months to learn a long role, especially if you're filming it, because of course in theatre, you're able to sort of work on it while you're working out the moves of the play. But with film, you have to have it, and then you go on and do it. You might have a couple of chances to do it, but it's not the bit I love the best.
Yeah.
I love it once I know the lines.
Have you ever forgotten your lines in the middle of a play?
Oh, yeah.
Really? What do you do?
Oh, yes. I have indeed. I mean, I remember Long Day's Journey into Night, one of the first previews, and I managed to cut 4 pages in a scene with my son, and with my youngest son, in fact, with Eugene, the one who was O'Neill. And as I was going, I was looking at him, and I thought, I've cut an awful lot. How much did I cut? I think, and I'd cut all his big arias. And I could see the panic on his face, because, you know, he didn't have quite such a long part as I had, and these were his golden moments that I just got rid of. So he managed to get it back, which was brilliant of him. And I had to repeat a 2 pages of O'Neill that I'd already said. So I tried to do it sort of giving different emphases, so it might sound different.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think they got hold of the fact. So yes, I remember doing a Harold Pinter play, The Caretaker. There's a wonderful speech about bus routes that Mick, the character I played, has. An iconic speech. And on the first night, I managed to cut that.
Oh.
So, of course, it makes the play go quicker. But these things happen. These things happen.
Well, Pinter obviously forgave you as you continued to do his work.
Yeah, fortunately. But you know, it's very strange how the mind works. I remember doing a musical, Joan Littlewood musical called "Oh, What a Lovely War," when I was starting out down in the Bristol Old Vic, and we were behind sort of pillars, and we had to step out as harlequins and do sort of 8 lines or whatever, and then step back again. And I was standing behind my pillar, and I thought, I don't know what I've got to say when it's gone. Well, and I could hear my cue, and I stepped out and I said the lines. The mind did it, but standing behind that pillar, it's frightening. So doing theatre can have its moments.
Well, that actually leads me to the question, having done so many mediums, do you have one that you prefer, stage or screen?
No, for me, it's like saying, do I prefer wet weather or sunny weather? Do I prefer the spring or the autumn? I like both. They're both different. They bring different things. I mean, the seed is the same. The seed is the thought and the emotion and the truth, hopefully. And working on film, it's just slightly different. You're working to that lens, and working in the theatre, you're working to a big house. So you have to send it out a bit further, what you're feeling, what you're thinking. And they're nice in contrast. Also, of course, you have in theatre, you're able to think, well, I didn't get that bit quite right tonight, but I'll try again tomorrow. So you're able to, keep practicing, keep trying to refine it and get it better. And I love that process. I know people have said to me, how can you do it night after night after night? And I said, have you ever asked a surfer how you can do it wave after wave after wave? I mean, you're always looking for that perfect wave. For the actor working in theatre, you're trying to get that perfect performance. And that I love. Don't get quite the same chance in film. Film's a little bit different. You have to jump in and try and produce something real and original and interesting.
I actually meant to ask you, were you familiar at all with Damon's work? Had you seen Lost or The Leftovers or?
I don't watch enough television. No, I mean, I knew his reputation, which was great. But no, I hadn't seen any of his other work. But I relied on others to tell me that he knew what he was doing.
I put it off, but because Watchmen was so wonderful, I finally watched The Leftovers, his previous series, and it is phenomenal. Phenomenal. Oh, yeah.
I'm going to write that down because I'll catch that.
I swear you will not regret it. It is. Fine. It just does things that no other shows do, and the performances are insane. And I actually see like a lot of crossover with Watchmen to a certain extent. Yeah, really? Regina's in it, Jovan's in it. Yeah, he builds his little families. I love it. And it's interesting to me that Watchmen, even though it's sci-fi, it feels so real and vital. And I know at least in America, many people didn't know about what happened in Tulsa, 100 years ago. And they learned it from a sci-fi show.
I think that's the most tremendous thing about the series, that it has, especially now, it has educated so many Americans to that situation, and how important it is that we don't forget our history, that we examine history that's been completely wiped out of the sort of national consciousness. That's very important, I think. So hopefully we won't make the same mistakes again.
Right. It's also just so entertaining. So I have my own theories, but I'm curious, why do you think so many people have responded so strongly to this show?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I mean, it has played only on limited channels in England, and so I haven't had a lot of feedback from here. But in America, I know it's grabbed people, well, I don't know. I suppose, you know, if a writer is any good, he's got his antennae out for what the society is feeling at the time. And if he has that, then he will write something which will mean something to that society because it means something to him. And that seems to have happened with Damon on this. You know, one can only be true to the thoughts in your head as a creative artist, I think, as a writer, or even as an actor. And if it's wonderful when things do land well. I mean, we know of many great projects which have happened maybe too early, or maybe too late, or maybe they didn't have very good ideas anyway. But to get something that has been well made, well thought out, that is intelligent and beautifully crafted, and have it land where the audience is receptive to it, that is a little miracle, I think.
Yeah, no, it's just so fantastic. And I'm so happy it found its audience in its time, because I'm sure you've been a part of things that were heralded, but it took years for people to discover it. Yeah. I mean, actually, people right now are obsessed with Dead Ringers. It's fascinating to see. Oh, and you know they're redoing it. I don't know if
I do. I've heard that. Yeah, it's going to be played by a woman, by Rachel Weisz. Now, who's a most wonderful actress, and I've been admiring her career for years. I think I was in the first film she ever made, Bertolucci movie called Stealing Beauty, and to see her meteoric rise since then has been glorious. So I look forward to her Dead Ringers, and maybe if she's going to play, I don't know if they're going to be, you know, twin gynecologists as I was, but if so, I don't know whether there's any way that maybe I could come in as a patient for her, so she could examine me, perhaps. I don't know, maybe gynecologists don't examine men, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that should be interesting, but like, I think, I don't know if people come up and they want to talk to you about movies, but that is the one I hear over and over again.
Yeah, well, I'm glad it is. I mean, Cronenberg's an extraordinary filmmaker, and I was proud of the work we did together.
I love that you thanked him in your Oscar speech, even though it wasn't for his movie.
Well, I don't know why one gets nominated for things. It's very strange. But I'm sure that my work in Dead Ringers had sort of added to the feelings when they decided to nominate Reversal of Fortune, or me and Reversal of Fortune. I think had I not done Dead Ringers, I wonder whether I would have been nominated for an Oscar, let alone
I think
one.
you probably would have been, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and on behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, we are just so grateful to you for joining us and sharing your experiences, process, and craft with your fellow performing artists.
Well, bless you. I'm really, really glad to have done it. SAG-AFTRA has been enormously supportive of me. It pays me a very nice little pension, for which I'm grateful every month. So thank you for inviting me and asking me to do it. And it's been a great pleasure talking to you.